So we finally have one that says write code this time. So this is when you're talking about your Python or your SQA. So it's really using a linear search algorithm to solve a problem. Now with linear search, quite often you're using that to find the position of a value that you're searching for and the position of it within the array. Okay, so it might be a 1D array or it might be an array of records. Now, just to say in terms of if I scroll up to the top, and this is the two wee scenarios. Okay. So if I'll just look at this one. Now, obviously we've got elements of the array and it starts at index 0. Now, within that array, this hotel, that's the first position. That's the second position in the array. So your position is always one above the index number. Okay, so it always starts at 0. It arrays the index, but the actual physical position of it is the very first value in the array. That's the position of the first value. The second, just like if you're in a queue for the shops, if you're in the front of the queue, you're in the position 1. You wouldn't be in position 0. But index and position, I always look at it as the index starts at 0, but the position starts at 1, so the position is always 1 above the index. Okay, so that's my interpretation of it there. If I go back down to write codes, so obviously you're writing the code, you want to be as accurate to the syntax as possible. It does say though that they're not going to penalise you if you make some, if it's not perfect syntax. Have a look at the previous video to actually see the proper wording, or look at the SQA website. So it just says then, so I've come up with these wee scenarios. So this one is the hotel rating one, so I've used the parallel array example because it might be on that type of question, or it might be an array of records, which I'll just scroll down and let you look at. So using the programming language of your choice, write the code for the algorithm that finds and displays the position of the cheapest 5-star hotel. Okay, so we want to find the position, so we're going to go through all 100 elements or all 100 hotels. So we're going to set position to be 0. Okay, so we're declaring that and setting it to 0, initializing it to 0, and index because we're going to go through this. Okay, now we're not setting the cheapest hotel to be 0 because there's not going to be a hotel that's cheaper than 0. So what we've done here is we said, well, get the cheapest and we'll set it to a very high value, and that means when we actually go through, start finding the 5-star hotels, the first one we'll find will no doubt be less than 1,000. So we're essentially applying linear search algorithm, but we're also using a find min, and again this is totally my interpretation as well. Okay, it might be something similar, and if it is, it's just a fluke, or it might not be. So I'm just second guessing, as I said before. Okay, so what we do is we then look through each element. Again, you want to keep it as accurate to the syntax as possible. So what we're saying, well, is if the rating's 5 and the price, okay, is actually, because we've got a price array, remember, at index 0, because we're starting from 0 to 99, if it's actually less than 1,000, and that's with a rating 5, then now set the cheapest to be whatever that value was in the price array, and then set the position to be 1 on the index. So that means the position is going to be keeping as the 1 above the value of the index that you've found that value. And what happens there is it just goes right through the array, all 100 values, and it should, using the find min and the linear search, it should find the cheapest value. Okay, obviously what might be a bit surprising there is actually setting that to 100, because quite often if you're doing find max, you're just setting it to the very first value in the array, but the very first value in the array, okay, so if you think about quite often it would be, I set the cheapest to price at 0, but price at 0 might be a hotel that's a 2-star and it might be £20, and it might be a case of that £20 is still a lot cheaper than the lowest value of the 5-star array. So that's why we've just taken a high value and then gone through each element, and if you find a price that's less than that, then just take that value and store it into cheapest. Okay, so that's a parallel array one for a linear search. For the record one, again this will be a longer video, so the record one is basically using the top movies array of records, and we're basically trying to find the position of the film with the lowest rating from the gateway studio. Again, set the position to 0, or declare position 0, declare index to be 0, and we're going to set the lowest to the highest possible value. We don't want to set the lowest to 0 because there might not be a movie that's that bad from gateway that got 0 out of 100, so we're just going to set it to the highest value. We're then going to go through each value, or sorry, each element within the array of records, and if you're finding, and this is all practice, so this is an array, and within the array this is a field you're looking at, so and if it's gateway, and remember if it's a word then use quotes, and if the top movies index rating is less than 100, then set that lowest to the new rating and add 1 to the position. So I'll go through and applying the find min but also the linear search, then you find the position and then you're just displaying the position. So it's very, very similar. The only difference is you've got that's the name of the array of records, but with this you actually have to then specify whereabouts within the record will you find that information to do with the movie title. Well, we've called it title for a reason because that makes sense to have it as title. You have it as rating. Okay, so it's very, very similar. These, apart from you've got a wee point and then the actual name of the field. So that's the name of the record, so the name of the array, and then that's essentially the name of the field within that record. Okay, so hopefully that's helped, and again it's all reading the guidance and trying to interpret what they're meaning.